the technical session of the webinar. I'm honored and delighted to invite Dr. S. Ramji, Director Professor of Pediatric and Neonatology and former Dean at Maulana Azad Medical College, New Delhi, to moderate the technical session with experts panel. Sir has over 3 decades of experience as a medical teacher and has chaired and has been associated with several high-level technical advisory committee of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Sir, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sheetal. सबसे पहले, I would like to welcome all our participants from the states. बहुत खुशी होती है जब देखते हैं कि 550 के करीब लोग इस वेबिनार में शामिल हैं. You know that unfortunately due to COVID, our usual interactions that we have had with all of you in the SNCUs and the districts has kind of got disrupted. But this is a great opportunity on the part of the ministry to bring us all together, keep reminding us what we need to do, keep updating, and also try to do some problem solving. आगे भी बहुत सारे वेबिनार्स आएंगे, लेकिन इस पर्टिकुलर वेबिनार में हमने 3 क्रिटिकल इश्यूज डिस्कस करने का फैसला लिया है. अग्नामी जी ने पहले ही कहा था कि हमारी न्यूबॉर्न केयर बहुत आगे बढ़ चुकी है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हैज बीन डेवलप्ड, एंड I saw a little comment on the chat by somebody who says that mortality is not dependent just on institutions but on health systems. I agree with it. But when a newborn reaches a health facility, what we do there is very much important. We have now provided access. We have access in terms of number of facilities. We have access in terms of transportation. But yet, when children reach the facility, quality is a very important factor, determines whether they will get discharged and get discharged intact. So the first session that we are going to have, which will be addressed by, will share with you, is Professor Sushma Nangia. Professor Sushma Nangia is the professor and head of neonatology at Kalavati Saran Children's Hospital. They are also the nodal center for monitoring all the SNCUs over here. So without wasting too much time, can I request Dr. Sushma to make a presentation on the quality of care in SNCUs, particularly in these hard times.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Ministry of Health, Child Health Division, the RCH, for this opportunity. And I've been given the task to speak on improving the quality of care in the SNCU. What we see here, nahi Kapil, pichli wali. Go back to the previous first slide. What we see here, the most important person that you see here for improving the quality of care in the SNCU, and I'm sure everybody can see this. I can see about 580 participants and about another 15 panelists, that this is the mother of the baby, the biologic mother of the baby who's there, and she's the most important person for us to improve the quality of care, apart from we, the doctors and the nurses. During these testing times, that is the last about 4 months or a little longer, we have not been able to interact, as Dr. Ramji had just said, and we haven't been able to come down to you for mentoring, nor have you been able to come up to us for the observership trainings that were happening. But what I present in the next 4 slides is the feedback from all of you while you are here as observers, and the observations by us while we are there for the mentoring visits. So Kapil, can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So the general observations at the newborn care corner, that is in the labor room or the OT, has been that that place is not owned by anybody. Ownership remains an issue, and I must tell all our SNCU doctors that it is our place, we need to own it. We cannot leave it on the labor room people to own it. It's our place. We need to equip it. We need to ensure that there are supplies. We need to ensure that the equipment is functioning fine. The cleanliness is also an issue, and we need to tie up with the sister in charge there and ensure that it is cleaned, and the floor or the wall or the way that things have to be done, linen has to be changed, it is done. Again, asepsis protocols are not really followed there, and routine care on mother's chest and abdomen does not happen as it is expected to happen, more because our people are not there at the labor room. So this is for the ministry to note that we must have nurses who are a part of the SNCU and they are rotated to the labor room so that we have somebody there who's dedicated to looking after the baby at the time of resuscitation and maintaining this place. As I said, clean linen many times is not available. Equipment, there is issue of the availability of the equipment as well as its maintenance. And many of the times we see that people who are there in the labor room or in the OT who are supposed to look after the baby are not trained in NSSK or in NRP. So this also needs to be looked into. This was about the newborn care corner. The next is about postnatal wards. Unfortunately, postnatal wards, our doctors from the SNCUs are not going there for rounds regularly. So as a result, basic essential newborn care is lacking. And what happens is that the baby, when he really becomes sick, he's rushed to the SNCU and he is not preemptively looked at during the round. So it's very important that these babies who are in the postnatal ward with their mothers are also our responsibility. It's not just the SNCU babies who are our responsibility. So that regular rounds should be done. And since we don't go there regularly, breastfeeding related issues get neglected. There are poor rates of breastfeeding and many a times there are frequent prelacteal feeds. Kapil, can we go to the next one? Yeah, now the SNCUs where you are really stationed, and in the SNCUs there are certain general observations. Admission criteria, I'm sorry to say, is not being followed. There is a lot of overcrowding of the units with unnecessary admissions, and whenever people have been there on the site to see, almost half of them had to be looked at as to they don't require admission and why are they there in the SNCU. Asepsis again is quite poor. And I don't like saying things which are not so good, but then that's a part of my job to look at. And we all need to be on the same page to realize what needs to be done better. Housekeeping protocols are there, but mostly on paper. They don't translate into action. And as ma'am had also said, Dr. Ghosh, that perinatal asphyxia is an issue. And why it's an issue, maybe the obstetric care, but also our resuscitation policies, because I have seen at places that after the baby is born and is not crying, he is brought in a tray to the SNCU rather than somebody being there to resuscitate. So that speaks a lot about how we can reduce perinatal asphyxia. We need to have people there who are trained and who can do the job of resuscitating the baby appropriately. Okay, the next one. Yeah, so specific observations within the SNCU, these are now relating to the technical aspect. Clinical protocols are not being followed. Everybody undergoes the FBNC training. They know how to manage a baby with respiratory distress. They know how to, or at least they have read, understood how to manage a baby with jaundice. When is phototherapy to be started? When is it to be stopped? When should a baby receive phenobarbital if a baby is asphyxiated, and so on and so forth. So once this is not followed, it results in poor quality of clinical care. Sepsis screen is not being performed, blood culture is not being done. So again, antibiotic usage, as we just saw in ma'am's slide, is alarmingly high, crossing 50% in many of the cases, and the diagnosis of sepsis was to the tune of 12 to 15%. Feeding policy is very poor. No milk is available when we are there in the unit. There is no trace of milk seen there. So obviously feeding does not happen, and that results in inappropriate overusage of intravenous fluids. And as regards the equipment, again, we have the SpO2 monitors. Majority times they are not being used, or if it is being applied on a baby, it's not uncommon to see saturations between 96 to 100%. Next, Kapil. So these are all the issues that need to be tackled. And what I'm going to talk here right now, focus areas will be related to resuscitation, use of oxygen, kangaroo mother care, feeding in the SNCU, antibiotic usage there, and what should be our quality indicators when we are looking at these aspects. Next one. So safe use of oxygen in the labor room during resuscitation. It's very important that we need to ensure that we are able to achieve the saturation of 80% by 5 minutes. So we have enough time that the baby saturates to the level of 80% by the end of 5 minutes. So there is no hurry to provide oxygen, right? Jump onto it. So what you see here on the screen as 80 and 100 are actually saturation of 80% and heart rate of 100. That is what we need to achieve. by 5 minutes of life. So if you see the right side of the slide, if you have a baby who's breathing at birth, but has issues in terms of not maintaining color, you need to position this baby to allow him to have an open airway, tactile stimulation, that is stimulating his back, and applying a pulse oximeter to the right wrist so that we get the preductal saturation. And then we act based on what is the preductal saturation. However, if the baby is not breathing, of course, after performing the initial steps, you need to resort to bag and mask ventilation, and the baby must have pulse oximeters being applied to his right wrist. Can we have the next slide, please? So then what is the saturation that we are targeting? If you see on the right side, at the first minute, it's only around 60-65%. And you look at the fifth minute, 80 to 85%. So we don't need to have a saturation of 90% in the first minute or the first 5 minutes or so. What we need to do is, in terms of oxygen, for a full-term baby, you need to start just with room air. You just need the bag and mask. You do not need an oxygen source, and you do not need to attach the oxygen to the bag. This is for a full-term baby. However, if the baby does not respond and does not have these saturations which are shown here at the minute specific times, we could attach oxygen and start resuscitation using oxygen. For babies who are less than 32 weeks, you just need to have 21 to 30% oxygen. I know many of us would speak up saying that we don't have a blender, we cannot blend oxygen, we only get 100%. Sure, you get 100%. So then you use room air if you don't have a blender. Or the other thing could be you use a bag and just attach oxygen, do not attach the reservoir. So you would get something like 40% oxygen. Sometimes it even goes up higher than that, but certainly it's not 100%. So that may be the other way of looking at when you are trying to resuscitate smaller babies and you don't have a blender. Next slide. Okay, so what is unsafe? Oxygen is giving 100%. 100% oxygen. Virtually no baby requires 100% oxygen, or at least the babies that are there in SNCU, they are not the ones who require 100% oxygen. So if you're giving 100% oxygen, this is unsafe. If you're giving unmonitored oxygen, any baby who's receiving supplemental oxygen and does not have a SpO2 monitoring, this is unmonitored. And giving prophylactic, oxygen to every sick baby. Oh, this is sick, let's start oxygen. No, if he is sick, please apply a pulse oximeter. If his saturation is below 90, sure, give him supplemental oxygen. And also, some people who got incubators, using oxygen within the incubator or trying to enrich the environment, next please, is also not desired. So we must use a pulse oximeter, maintain SpO2 in the range of 91 to 95. Saturation less than 90 is the only place where you're going to start oxygen. Any transient drop in saturation, like when the baby is moving or crying or during feeding, you do not need to start oxygen therapy. It is transient, it will come up. If it doesn't come up, look at what the cause is and you may have to start oxygen. At no time baby receiving supplemental oxygen should have saturations above 95. So when you see numbers of 96, 97, 98 and so on, that's not done. You need to titrate down the oxygen and then see that you get saturation between 91 to 95. Okay. So there were some quality indicators, but we can move that. So the next thing that we need to look at is improving coverage of KMC. I'm not saying start KMC because I know everybody is aware of KMC, everybody is doing, but we need to improve the coverage of KMC. Next, please. Yeah. And why I need to bring this slide is it is evidence-based, it is something low resource, but the problem is despite knowing, we are still not able to apply it. It has shown reduction in sepsis, reduction in hypothermia, even mortality. So we must start doing kangaroo mother care to all small babies who are low birth weight, especially below, next one, especially below less than 2 kilos. Who can do it? Anybody who is healthy can do it, who is willing to do it, must be provided to all low birth weight babies. And the third bullet is very important. Ongoing medical support like oxygen therapy, respiratory support, IV fluids, and tube feeding are no contraindication. Baby can be provided KMC next while the baby is receiving these therapies. You all know the position, how the baby has to be placed. The baby and the mother both are comfortably seated and the baby is placed on the mother's torso. Next. Yeah. So what's important here is look at the box which is beneath the empty chair. KMC duration needs to be counted, and cumulatively completed hours need to be mentioned on the file on every day next morning. So if the cumulative time, once she is done KMC for, let's say, 2 hours, once 1.5 hours, another time another 1 hour. So no session should be less than 1 hour, but the cumulative hours you must note down, saying that it is short KMC if it is just 4 hours, extended between 5 to 8 hours, long between 9 to 12 hours, and continuous when it is more than 12 hours. Why it is important? Because when you note it, you realize, oh my God, this is short. I need to ensure that the next day it's even more. I need to motivate the mother. So what we have observed is, once you go and chart it, what you do is you make aware all the doctors and nurses, and you eventually end up increasing the duration. So we could move from something like just 2 to 3 hours to something like 6 to 10 hours per day. Next one, by ensuring that we keep a log. And as I said, you can provide KMC even on respiratory support. Next. All the mothers are much more confident when they are doing KMC than when they are scared and away. And as you can see, fathers are getting more and more involved into doing KMC at the end of the day after their day's work. Next. What do you need to look into as your quality indicators? What percentage or what proportion of babies received KMC during hospital stay? And how many on CPAP or on oxygen you could provide KMC? At the end of the month, look at as to how many received only short or how many received extended, and so on. Next. Next slide. The next important aspect after oxygen and KMC is optimal feeding. And optimal feeding would be, you need to start enteral feeding as soon as possible. And this can be as early as 2 hours of life, as soon as the baby gets admitted. What you see here is the mothers giving feed to the baby. And the contraindication for feeding is only if the baby has abdominal distension or he is in shock. Apart from that, any diagnosis that you have, the baby has any issues, please feed the baby. If we cannot take feed, give him tube feed. Next. Next slide. So what we need to achieve postnatal growth like the fetus. Next one. Best option is mother's own milk. If that is not available, and if you have the luxury of having donor milk, that would be the next. Otherwise, use preterm formula rather than going for a term formula. This is the way that the baby needs to be fed. If the baby is small, up to 31 weeks, tube feeding. If the baby is 32 to 34, spoon feeding. And if the baby is 34 weeks and beyond, breastfeeding. Next. So you would start breastfeeding in a baby who is more than 34 weeks, but if he doesn't take breastfeeding, doesn't mean that you don't feed. Give him by spoon. If it's a baby between 32 to 34, he should be started on spoon feeds. But if he doesn't accept for some reason, that doesn't mean that we don't feed. We need to put in a orogastric tube and feed him. Next. Similarly, when the baby is on IV fluids, you need to transit him onto OG tube. If he is on OG, need to transit him on spoon. If he's on spoon, you need to transit him directly to the breast. This transition has to be slow. It should not be something which is abrupt. So try once. Next day, maybe try once per shift. The next day, try alternate feeds. And the next day after that, if the baby continues to tolerate, the baby goes on the next mode, completely all 12 feeds. Okay, babies do need some supplementation, especially VLBW. Next one. So if the baby is just on mother's milk, you need to give him calcium, iron, vitamin D, folic acid. So all these will end up into a lot of osmolality. So you need to stagger it. So the feeds should receive one feed if it has iron, the other feed should be vitamin D, the other feed should be folic acid, and certain feeds divided, osteocalcium, at least 4 feeds. So in the whole day, the baby gets about 6 to 7 feeds where something is added. A word about total feeding. If the baby is completely stable, you should actually start him on full feeds from first day, and this will obviate the need for giving any intravenous fluids. And the baby, a simple example here, that the baby can be on complete feed, something like 8 ml every 2 hourly for a 1.2 kg baby on day 1, where the requirement is 80 ml per kg. No IV fluids, no pricks, and this baby is obviously not going to get infected. Next. Okay. Next. The last bit that I need to touch upon is usage of antibiotic within the SNCU and ICU. Next slide. What does antibiotic do to the baby? It does a lot of harm. Baby has some good normal gut flora that he's received from his mother, which is going to further increase when you feed him enterally using mother's milk. But when you give antibiotics, it may or may not kill your pathologic bacteria, but it certainly diminishes or kills your normal gut flora, which is very unhealthy for the baby. It also leads to multi-drug resistant organism coming up, and there is definite evidence to say that death is increased, necrotizing enterocolitis is increased, late onset sepsis is increased, and the baby's duration of hospital stay increases when you give him antibiotics unnecessarily. So we must resort to using antibiotics most judiciously. Next, please. So every unit must have its own antibiotic policy. That's been said many times. It's such a cliched phrase that depends on your pathogen profile if you're doing cultures. If you have to take something empirically, then a penicillin with an aminoglycoside is a good combination. Ampicillin, gentamicin. If you feel no, that's not working, okay, go for amoxicillin, clovelate, or go for ampicillin, sulbactam. So that will be your penicillin, and with that aminoglycoside, genta, or amikacin. Please do not use cephalosporins as your first line, because they really induce the production of ESBL, cephalosporinosis, and fungal colonization, which increases further resistance, and your antibiotic which is required for meningitis becomes a waste when you're using it as a first line. So don't use cephalosporin as the first line. Next. I think that should be the last slide. This is very important. When you see on the left side, following conditions do not require antibiotics just because the baby has this condition and is in the SNCU. And what are these? Presence of 1 or 2 risk factors. Mother has leaking PV, the baby is preterm, baby is male, one vaginal examination, and you say, oh, he has risk factors and I need to start antibiotics. No. Presence of 1 or 2 risk factors, you observe the baby. If the baby has any issue, yes, you could go ahead and start. So no baby is just going to turn turtle like this. Baby admitted for jaundice, baby admitted just for prematurity, he's stable. Baby admitted with meconium stained amniotic fluid, mild respiratory distress, which may be due to delayed adaptation or TTNB. Perinatal asphyxia, you know he is lethargic because of asphyxia. It's not because that this baby is sepsis, but we lump everything into sepsis and give antibiotics. That's where we start going wrong. Empiric upgradation can be done. You've started first line, the baby doesn't show improvement by 48 hours. But give it that much time. And during this time, what do you have to do? You don't have to sit like this. You have to provide optimal supportive care. If the baby is hypoxic, give him oxygen. If the baby is hypoglycemic, take care of his sugar. If he's hypothermic, take care of his temperature. If he's in shock, hypotensive, take care of his volume. So all that needs to be done while the antibiotics take time to work on the baby. If there is clinical deterioration and you can't explain that, sure, you may upgrade the antibiotics. By this, I mean if the baby is hypoglycemic and lethargic, you have a reason for him to lethargic. If the baby is through MSL and he has respiratory distress, you have a reason for his distress to be worsening. So then you don't take it as clinical deterioration and start upgrading the antibiotics. But if you don't have an explanation, sure, you could upgrade the antibiotics. Next. Okay, so these would be some of the quality indicators in terms of how many babies were started on antibiotics, what proportion of the total admissions on a day is receiving antibiotics, and at the end of the month, look at what is the proportion of early onset or late onset sepsis, and what is the proportion of babies who received antibiotics vis-a-vis the babies who did not receive antibiotics at all. Look at what is that proportion. Do we have that proportion of babies who stayed for a week or 10 days, but they did not receive any antibiotics? So that's all that I have in terms of the quality of care that needs to be provided. And it can only be done when we are doing it together. And our SNCU staff, the doctors and nurses, are there to look at these things minutely and make these minimal changes so that we have best outcomes for our sick and small beings. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have really covered a great deal of ground on what needs to be said. मैं 2-3 बातें कहना चाहता हूँ अपने सारे डॉक्टर जो स्टेट से हैं. सुषमा जी ने कहा कि लेबर रूम, postnatal wards are kind of neglected areas. I want to re-emphasize to each one of you that when we say SNCU, it is not just the walls that surround and create an area. That's not the only responsibility of all of us in SNCUs. SNCU staff are expected to look at newborns wherever they are in the facility. It could be the labor room, it's the postnatal ward, it is the identified area which you call an SNCU. So please remember कि सारा एरिया आप सभी की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि बच्चा पोस्टनेटल वार्ड था, मैं गया नहीं, मेरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं है. It's not true. I do understand that there are challenges in terms of human resource, but you have to find a way that to use all of yourselves, that is your doctors and nurses, in an optimal fashion, interact with your colleagues who are taking care of the labor room and the postnatal ward so that these babies and including their mothers get looked after. सुषमा जी ने कहा कि माँ एक सेंटर फिगर है इस पूरे न्यूबॉर्न केयर में, और यदि हम माँ का देखभाल नहीं करेंगे तो बच्चे का आउटकम भी बहुत अच्छा नहीं होगा. So going to the postnatal ward or talking to mothers and families while they come in contact with you for looking at the sick baby newborn, please talk to them, empower them, encourage them, give them hope that much can be done by them. We have just completed evaluating a couple of states on looking at this is after almost 1.5 to 2 months after children were discharged from SNCUs. And one of the striking things that we noted was that बहुत सारे SNCU में लोग माँ कहते हैं कि डॉक्टर नर्सेस ने बात किया, एडवाइस भी दिया, but when we looked at the content, we found very essential things were missing in that content. So my request to all of you is, your FBNC guideline clearly outlines the important things that need to be said. Please ensure that they are said. You make sure the mothers and family understand these issues. So when these babies leave your facility, they are well looked after. Otherwise, we may have a delayed death, not in the SNCU, but they may die at home some weeks later. The other very important thing that she talked about is our protocols. ठीक है, कुछ इक्विपमेंट, HR इश्यूज तो आपके हाथ में नहीं है, लेकिन बाकी जो हमारे हाथ में है वो हम ट्रीटमेंट, इलाज कैसे करते हैं. Antibiotic use. You saw that slide, the initial that Dr. Ghosh showed. The striking thing there was that the antibiotic use was close to maybe 3 or 4 times the number of babies were eventually diagnosed at sepsis in the unit. Now, एक बात जरूर है कि आपको शुरू करने की जरूरत पड़ सकती है, बट शुरू करने के बाद यदि बच्चा ठीक है, ये जरूरी नहीं कि हम 5 दिन 7 दिन चलता रहे. आपको लगे कि बच्चा सेप्सिस नहीं है, is recovered, unlikely, if you don't have a culture, you may even stop it. So just starting is one challenge, but equally important to stop the antibiotics when the child does not require it. So she's already told you what the huge problems are. The other problem, which I think she would have wanted to say, but maybe time didn't allow, not only use of oxygen in the labor room, but I think oxygen in the SNCU. कितनी बार हमने देखा है कि अलार्म बज रहा है और नर्स जाके उसको सिर्फ चुप कर देती है, shut off and keeps going to her work. That's not the purpose. अलार्म की लिमिट्स हैं, वो हमारे FBNC गाइडलाइन में क्लियरली लिखा है. हायर लिमिट भी डेंजरस है, लोअर से नीचे भी डेंजरस है. तो ये अलार्म इसलिए है कि हम पहले देखें क्या कारण है. We must not assume that all alarms are faulty. Respond to the alarm by seeing the baby first, and once you're sure that it could be there's no serious problem, it could be an error because the baby moved or the probe came off, that's okay. But each time it is important for all of you to ensure जो भी वहां है वो respond करे. Mother is a very good source who can act as an alarm. You can even teach a mother to say कि ये लाल बत्ती बज रही है तो please मेरे को बुला लीजिए कि मैं वहां हूं भी नहीं. So please ensure quality is in our hands, right? So while systems issues may be there, but my request to all of you is these 4 or 5 things that she has said with regard to feeding, with regard to KMC, with regard to oxygen use, antibiotic use. These are all very doable, 100% in the control of all of us. So I would once again request all my colleagues in the SNCUs to please ensure that you keep quality on top. See, India, when mortality starts coming down, the next thing everybody looks at is quality. So I think India's mortality has started coming down to a level where we should now start worrying about quality. कि मेरा बच्चा जो है जब डिस्चार्ज होता है वो इंटैक्ट डिस्चार्ज होना चाहिए, हमारे कारण उसको और कोई बीमारी नहीं होना चाहिए. तो ये सब चीजें बहुत जरूरी हैं. So thank you, Sushma ji, for bringing all these points, and I do hope our colleagues who are listening through will go back and ensure that they take it upon themselves, look at every baby as their own child, and ensure that such things don't happen to any of the babies under their care.
Thank you, sir.
Let me move on to the next and